Okay, so this is the first section where you could say that we're now building on our knowledge. And although there are a few more introductory sections in the course coming up after, I think this is the best point to introduce this part, and that is keyframing. And in essence, keyframing is setting a value at a certain point and telling Premiere Pro that over a certain time you want to change that value to something else. Let me show you what that looks like in visual. But to first do that, we're going to do it with an image. You can do it with video, you can do it with image, you can do it with audio, you can do it with pretty much anything. But to show you, I'm going to show you with an image, just to show you the basics. And the way in which I'm going to do that is, rather than drag in an image, I'm going to create an image. Because of course we could drag in an image like we've dragged in a video into here, but we're going to create an image within here, and then we're just going to keyframe it, not for our final output from this video, but just to show you what we can do. So let's get a frame that I like the look of. Let's give it some room. You'll know what I mean by room when we get there. So that's the image that I want. And effectively what we need to do is we need to export that frame as an image. Now, I do have the button here. Remember when we changed all these buttons by pressing that plus and then dragging down what we wanted? If you remember right at the beginning, I also have the keyboard shortcut in Edit, Keyboard Shortcuts. Drag this over, and my export frame is set to C. If you want to do that and it's not already in there, just a quick reminder, type in here export. We scroll down to export frame, and then we click in here and you type C. The default is Control-Shift-E, which for me is two modifiers, being Control and Shift, too many. C does me absolutely fine. So this is the frame that we want. So I'm going to either hit C on my keyboard or click this button, and we're now brought up with this dialog box. Now, if this is the first time this dialog box has come up, it probably doesn't have import to project checked, and it's probably set to BMP or bitmap. I would advise not to use bitmap. For the highest quality or quality to size ratio, I'd probably suggest PNG, or you can also select JPEG. I'm going to leave it with PNG at the moment. And I'm also going to tick import into project, because if we left that unchecked and we saved this image out, it would save in the path that we've set. However, it wouldn't be here. We'd then have to do another step and go and find that and then drag it in. Premiere Pro can cut out the middleman and cut out that step and import into project. So I'm going to leave that checked. However, your path is not going to be this, so I'm just going to show you. If at this point before you export, you press browse, and here is where I'm saving my images, my exported images from Premiere Pro. If you remember, we set up the folders here, and here in images is where I'm going to select the path to save the images, because as well as being here, it needs to be saved, or anything that's in here needs to be saved somewhere on your machine that can be accessible. Flash drive, external hard drive, internal hard drive, NAS system, whichever. It just has to be readable and writable from Premiere Pro, and it can place it here so it can access it. Quick little recap there for you. So I'm going to select that folder, and now I'm going to name it, and clicking in this name and Control A to select all the text, and I'm going to title that Pizza in Oven. You can name it whatever you like, really, but Pizza in Oven, and I'm going to press OK. And remember, this is a PNG, not that you'll be able to really tell the difference in here, and it's set to import into project. So when I press OK, it's going to place it up here in the project bin. Now, it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in nests or sequences or wherever, anything that it creates, such as images in Premiere Pro, will come right to the source, right to the root as it were, of, say, this is a big folder where all your subfolders are in. So you could leave that there, but if you're doing a lot of this and you're generating a number of different things, you're gonna kind of want to keep it tidy. So don't forget, you can go anywhere in this empty space and right click and new bin, or if you've got no empty space left, you can click this little folder here, which will create a new bin. I'm going to label this. As you can see, it creates a bin and has the text ready to be edited. So I'm going to type images, and if you hit return, so the enter button right below delete on your keyboard, it will save, it will commit that title, but it will go to the next item within there to edit that text, and it does it all the way along. And I think this is a way to be able to rename things quickly, but we don't really want to do that. The way in which I commit a title that I type in here is to hit the enter right on the edge of my keyboard, because I have an extended keyboard with the number pad. Remember, we talked about that before, and I hit enter there and it commits it. If you don't have that, once you've typed the name, you can just click anywhere and it will just commit that. I know that's a long explanation for that, but I've seen a number of people get lost within the naming section of here, and you start renaming things the wrong thing, just trying to get out of it. I've actually changed my mind and I'm going to export a different image, so I've just deleted it from there. And let's just, I want to do that because I want to focus in a different place. So anyway, we do just as we did before. I'm going to do pizza in oven. I'm going to import into project and press OK. Now that's going to ask me if I want to overwrite, because I've deleted it from here, but it's not deleted from where it's saved, which is temp Premiere Pro images. So I'm going to overwrite that, and it's going to bring in right there. I'm going to drag that into images and double click in here, and here is my image right there. So as you can see, although I can scrub here because that's a video, if I scrub here, it's nothing because it's just an image. It's just showing me when I click into source that it's there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom all the way out here. Don't forget Alt or Option if you're on a Mac, and scroll on your scroll wheel. Or if you don't have a scroll wheel and you can't use the touchpad, you can zoom in and out by using these handles at the bottom. I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to drag this image onto here. Now, as you can see, it drags in just like a video clip. Absolutely fine. However, whereas a video clip will have a set amount that you can extend it because there's a limited amount of footage in there, because this is a still image, you can make this as long or as short as you like. So I'm just going to create some space there. And if I hit space on my keyboard to play, you can see it's playing it, but it's just playing a still image because that's all it is. So if I get to 120, enter, that's a really easy way to get to a specific point on your timeline. Don't forget, we go frames, seconds, minutes, hours. I'm just going to put this up to here. The reason why I'm doing that is because I want to set the duration of 5 seconds. So that's 120. I'm going to click in here and delete and press 5, enter. That's 5 seconds. So if I trim that out there, we now have a 5-second clip, which is just one image. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to add motion through keyframing. And the way in which we do that is we select the clip that we want to use and we go back to our favorite place, Effects Controls. Now, to initialize keyframing, what we need to do is we need to start the stopwatch. Remember, I said keyframing was affecting a value, anything. I'm using vague descriptors because it really can be pretty much anything. But we need to set a value at a certain point and a value of that same thing at a different point, but a different value. And that's how we're going to keyframe. So let me show you quite simply. So what we're looking for is a stopwatch, which is here. If you remember the kind of stopwatch that a trainer would use to time a sprinter, that's what this is. these are stopwatches, and as you can see as you go down, there are a number of things we can actually keyframe. Not just position or scale, we can do the rotation, the anchor point, the anti-flicker filter, never used that in my life, and the opacity. The speed, for some reason, in time remapping is always toggled on. That's how you can tell it's toggled on, because of the blue. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about that, but it's always toggled on. Yeah, so I'm going to go right to the very beginning of this clip, which is effectively a 5-second still image, and I'm going to toggle on the keyframing for scale. Nothing's happened. Well, it actually has, but you can't tell. Right here, because we're right at the edge, you can only see half of it, but if I drag it out, you can see a diamond and a blue diamond. That means it's a keyframe. If I click out, it's not highlighted. The only reason it was blue is because it was selected. But this is a keyframe, and it's a simple linear keyframe. Remember that. We'll be dealing with that shortly. But this is a linear keyframe. I'm going to put that back where it was. You can just literally drag these around just by clicking and dragging. And then I'm going to go to the end of this clip. So remember, the shortcut, if we're in the timeline, is just to press, if you press right, it goes forward 1 frame. If you hold down shift and go right, it goes forward 5 frames. So obviously we went from 1 to 6. If we press down, bearing in mind that V1 is selected here, if we press down, we go to the end of that clip. Similarly, if we press up, we go to the beginning of that clip. So we're pressing down. I'm just going to zoom in here a bit and come back 1 frame, and I'm going to set a keyframe here. So to add another keyframe, you don't click the stopwatch again, because what the stopwatch does when you click it the first time, it does 2 things. It says, 1, I want to animate and I want to keyframe this value, the scale value, and it creates a keyframe like we did. If we click that again, it will come up with a warning. It will say, this action will delete existing keyframes. Do you want to continue? That's because the stopwatch, cancel that, the stopwatch literally turns on and turns off keyframing. Now, that used to really annoy me. The fact that when you want to turn it off, it comes up with a warning. But actually, as I'm doing this course, I'm realizing that when I first learned this 6, 7, maybe 8 years ago, it really helped, because if you're able to do that without a warning, you may then get further down the road and realize, oh, I actually turned off my keyframing. I didn't change it. So I've lost that, and you'll have done loads of work since then, and you'll have to redo the work, because you can't just undo, because all the other work that you've done since is lost. So what we want to do to create a new keyframe is not to toggle off keyframing, but to click here, which is add or remove keyframe. What we can also do is change the value. If we change the value, it will create a new keyframe. But in this, we will do that later, but in this instance, I don't. I just want to add another keyframe. Now, we're actually 1 frame before the end. I've come in just so you can actually have something on screen. But if we tilde this, you can see that there's actually room for it to go. So I'm going to move it all the way to the end, tilde back out. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to affect the first keyframe, because I want to start in and zoom out. So to navigate between the keyframes, to snap to the different keyframes, you just use these little arrow buttons. So I'm going to click left to go to the first keyframe. As you can see, the playhead has now moved to the beginning of there. Let's just zoom out so we've got all that in view. So what I want to do is I want to zoom in. Now, bearing in mind that when your scale is at 100, that's 100%. So if we want to zoom in, we don't go for a lower number, we go for a higher number. So I want to scale in by about 20%. So I could drag this number up, I could twirl this down and pull the slider up. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to click in, I'm going to type 120 and hit enter. Boom, we're in. We are punched in to this image. Now what happens? Well, if we press play, what we're going to do is we're going to change. We're going to move between these 2 keyframes, And this first keyframe is set to scale 120. And if I skip to the next keyframe, which is right on the end, that's not annoying at all, is it? We're at 100. Obviously, we've gone to black because we're at the end of the clip. So let's go back to the beginning and play this through. And as you can see, over that course of 5 seconds, we've moved from 120 to 100%. Is that clear? Great. So what we've done is we've added motion to this image. 120% all the way out to 100%. Now what I want to do next is I want to create maybe a little bit of, I don't know, natural movement, because this is what we call a linear keyframe. As you can see, everything is straight line. So this is the difference between 120 and 100. It is actually slightly diagonal, as a diagonal going down. And this velocity, this is what we're looking at. The velocity is start and stop. So that's the speed of the actual keyframe. So what I want to do is I want to make that a little bit more natural, I think is the word. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come in by a few frames. Let's say by 15 frames. That was shift and press right 3 times. And as you can see, we're at 15 frames past 20 seconds. And I'm going to get this keyframe and I'm going to drag it to there. So now from the beginning, we've got no movement and then it starts. And then again, it then stops. So I'm going to do similar with the last keyframe. I'm going to bring that, let's bring this up to 24 seconds. We've got a second of no movement at the end. And I'm going to drag this keyframe. So now we've got absolute stillness, start moving and stop moving. Now, that's quite abrupt. It really is quite an abrupt movement. If I can make this show even more, I'm going to zoom in more. So then the zooming out has to be quicker to get to 100 at the same point. So if I press play now, you can see how it starts and then stops. Now, as I said, that's quite abrupt. So we're gonna add some easing. And what that does is it eases the start and the stop of the keyframes. As I said, this is just a straight line going from, where are we now? 161 to 100. And we're just at a velocity here, just straight from minus 9.0. This velocity stays the exact same value all the way through, minus 17.9, and then stops. So we want to change that. We want to change this. We want to make it a curve. And the way in which we do this is we change the interpolation. And easy way to do that is on this diamond, on the first one, we want to right click it and it gives us the option. So linear is selected by default. We've got Bezier, auto Bezier, continuous Bezier, hold, ease in and ease out. Now, these work, Bezier, auto Bezier, continue Bezier, but I prefer to do it manually. So that's the way I'm going to teach you. So you're not relying on anything else. And the way to remember which ease you use, in After Effects, you also have easy ease, which eases both ends. What we're going to do, the way in which to remember is we're starting, so we're easing out of a stationary position. So let's just recap. We've selected this keyframe, we've right clicked it and we've gone to ease out. And if I tilde that, you can see now that we've got, rather than, let me undo, rather than just a straight line for the speed, I'm going to redo, which is the opposite of undo, which rather than Control and Z is Control Shift Z. And we've now got a curve here, which will ease out of the stationary position. If I press play and show you what that looks like, you see how it didn't just start. It kind of started from the stationary and slowly sped up to the point where it wanted to go, but then it stops abruptly. What we want to do is we want to do the same to the second keyframe, but in reverse. Rather than easing out, we want to, that's right, ease in. So we're going to right click this final keyframe, and we're going to ease in. See now how we've got a curve. If I undo and undo, we had a flat line. If I redo and then redo, we've now got a curve. And I'll show you what that looks like here. Right towards the end, it doesn't just stop, it slows down before it stops. So that's keyframing. That's the basics of keyframing. What I want to do is, this is the final position, and that's great. I'm happy with that. But let's go to that first keyframe. We're kind of starting from nowhere. So let's also keyframe the position. So just like we did before, we're going to hit position, and then I'm going to move. I'm doing this purposely, so I have to show you what to do if you haven't created the last keyframe first. I'll show you what I mean. So with these values, this is the Y value and the X value. So the X value is side by side, Control Z, and the Y value is up and down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this down, and let's see, because we've zoomed in, because we're in at 161%, we've got quite a bit of room to work with. We can move within here. So I'm going to start maybe here. And I'm going to set this, like we did before, to ease out, which is in the temporal interpolation. So ease out, and then I'm going to click to the last one, and all of a sudden we've got black bars because we haven't set a position, a second position, and we've changed the keyframe here to be up. So now we need to bring it down. How do we do that? Well, if you want to be all the way out in the original position where we were at, it's easy. Obviously, you can drag down and place it there, and okay, we're back to 540, but you can also reset parameter. So that would, even if this was all the way over there, you could reset parameter. Boom, we're back to where we should be. And we have another linear keyframe. So I'm going to right click that, temporal interpolation, and ease in. And now we go back to the beginning, press play, and both keyframes are easing out and easing in at the same time. If I made that a linear and that keyframe a linear, what would that look like? Well, let's see. What you're going to see is you're going to see that the movement starts and stops quite abruptly, but the scale will ease. You're probably going to see a bit of black bars. Yep, you see the black bar there? And that actually really shows the easing of the scale. Watch this towards the end here. And then we sit in. That's because as we slow down the scale movement, the velocity of the position is staying the same. So that's why we want to ease in at the end and ease out at the beginning, like we did the first ones. Then we've got no black bars, and we nice and smoothly keyframe that movement from zoomed in to zoomed out. That's your basics of keyframing.